Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Counterplay Plus Plus on 6++. I'm your host, Tom, very lowest of men, and I'm back once again with this series which looks at problems in the game and how you can solve them. Now, we've been working our way through some problem units. We've looked at Deathwing Knights, called Berserkers, but I got a very interesting comment asking if we could look at dealing with reactive moves. Now, this is obviously tied to certain units. Look at my little friend Terry the Termagant here. But there are also a whole range of forms that this takes. And I thought it was a very interesting topic. I think it's something that we all encounter in our games and struggle with at times. So I felt a video focusing particularly in on reactive moves would be very worthwhile. So I'm going to make that for you today. And we'll get back to covering problems units next time. So if you just let me know in the comments what units you'd like to see, I'll keep on working through that list. So today we'll be thinking about reactive moves more broadly, what you, the opponent, can do to manage them and deal with them in your games. As ever, going to outline what the problem is, then we're going to move into how you solve the problem and think about some of the forms that solution might take. Thanks for supporting 6++. Please do hit the old like and subscribe. Leave us a comment if you want to sign up as a YouTube member online and support us a little bit that way. That helps us massively as well. We're on our way to 100 members, guys. Let's see if we can make it this month. That'd be fantastic. Right, let's dive in. So, what's the problem? Reactive moves are moves for your opponent's units that are triggered by our own actions in our turn. Now, there's a whole range of different forms that this takes. You can have a lot of abilities that are triggered when you move within 9 of something, for example. You move a unit within 9, and then suddenly it's moving away somewhere else, or towards us, depending on what kind of a unit it is. It might be a combat unit, suddenly it's creeping closer. It might be termagants moving to get in your way, like Terry does here. But it could also be running away. And the reactive moves are very powerful because what they do is give your opponent agency in your turn, right? In your turn, you're supposed to be taking action, making things happen. But all of a sudden, you've triggered something and they are able to respond and do something interesting with their own models, which gives them a new sort of opportunity, creates new advantages for them in the game, and can often disrupt our own plans. So reactive moves can do a bunch of nasty things. They can deny us space. They can block us off, get in our way. They can cause charges to fail. This is a huge one, moving just that bit further back. So it's hard for the opponent to deal with them. Or they can hide units that we were trying to shoot. This is obviously a recent one that Necron Star Shatter has, but it was also a very common feature of early Index Eldar with Phantasm, suddenly moving a unit out the way or moving a unit forwards, creating all sorts of problems. Phantasm, obviously the most powerful form of reactive move we've seen because it's not even triggered by the opponent. The Eldar can just do it. So that's perhaps the most extreme and unpopular example. Typically, though, reactive moves have particular causes and triggers are then used in a whole range of different ways by different armies, whether it's pushing bugs up to create space, sneaking some Harlequins over somewhere else, pulling a raider back behind a wall so it's not going to get shot. All sorts of applications, and they can be a particular puzzle for us to deal with because they cause our best laid plans to collapse. So I think understanding exactly what is going on with these, what the problem really is, and how we can turn that to our advantage is the best most important thing in terms of getting solutions that work when dealing with reactive moves. So let's do it. If we think about solving the problem, we're going to come back to what we always come back to, which is what does your opponent want to happen? Why would they use reactive moves at all? What is it they are hoping to achieve? And then what are the points of failure and collapse in that plan? Understanding how it works, understanding how we can make it fail, absolutely crucial to preventing our opponent just having whatever they want. So what do they want? Well, they want you ultimately to fall into a trap, right? As we discussed with the sort of the blood surge, which in itself is a reactive move for the Khorne Berserkers last week. It's a trap set there to catch you out in a particular way. You're going to do a thing. They're going to then do their thing, take advantage of it. That's going to change the momentum of a game back towards them, give them an advantage. A lot of reactive moves, it's about failed charges or failed shooting efforts, failed ranged engagement. It's about, you thought you were going to hurt this thing, now it's gone. And often that creates, what we might call an anti-trade situation, right? You thought you were sending a unit to kill theirs. It's then going to be exposed and probably likely to get hurt itself. But they've now denied you even the kill you were trying to get, whether that's with a charge or with a shooting unit. So reactive moves can cause you to trade down quite aggressively, right? Because you've exposed something, you haven't done what you tried to do, and then they're going to be able to hurt you back. They can also cause all sorts of trouble with the primary and with scoring because units can move in your way, block you off. Suddenly there's loads of OC on an objective somewhere that you didn't want to be there. So I think there are a whole number of sort of smaller shenanigans people want to pull with their reactive moves, either sort of proactively pushing things out or sort of reactively kind of denying you opportunities in terms of your scoring, in terms of your kills, in terms of your sort of board presence and movement as well. They often want to protect key pieces, so there are certain things that would be much more valuable to use a reactive move on than others. Think a Doomsday Arc, or a really sort of a Phoenix Lord, something that's really really valuable, as opposed to some ranges. You might be more likely to use your valuable reactive moves to protect these. But also, they're often setting up their own turn to be better because they're going to take advantage of your exposed units. They're going to take advantage of your mistake there, and that's going to essentially frustrate your plans and make it easier for them to achieve theirs. So it's complicated, but essentially they want you to slip. They want to then be set up to take advantage of the slip. And I think an important thing to note with this that's going to be very relevant for the advice we look at in the next section is that reactive moves are at their most powerful in one-on-ones, right? Oh, I point my one tank at your one thing, I shoot it, I don't kill it, it moves away. I send my one unit at your one guy, he runs away. Narrow one-on-one isolated uses of these tools are where they are most powerful and they feel most oppressive. And that ultimately is what the opponent wants. So that's going to let us start working out some of the points of failure. If we think about points of failure, reactive moves are typically once per turn / unit. So if there is a stratagem, it's typically only going to be the one use of it. So an opponent might have a reactive move stratagem somewhere. You know they can use it once, but you also know they can't use it beyond that. You know certain units can do reactive moves, again, like Terry the Termagant here. But he's only going to do it once per turn. Crucially, for a lot of reactive moves, they are resource-based, right? So they will involve spending command points to use as well. So the fact it costs resources matters, and that is actually a real issue for the opponent if you can create the right conditions to make a problem. So I've got 3 sections on actually solving this problem and how you deal with it. So let's dive into those. Part 1. Knowledge is power. Reactive moves are infinitely more powerful when we weren't expecting them. And I think that goes for a lot of things in 40k. But if you walk blindly into a situation and then caught out, that's when you're going to be most vulnerable and your opponent is going to be able to get the most advantage from using it. So to equip yourself against this, you have to ask your opponent about any movement they can do in your turn. I like to do this before the game if I don't know. What do you have in the army that could move reactively in my turn? Do you have any stratagems that you can cause you to move in my turn as well? And it's worth, I think, when you're setting up plays, double checking and asking, right? If I come within 9 of this, can it move? These sorts of things. I think just being very careful with this is important because you want to understand it, and ultimately you want to create a situation where reactive moves are not being triggered except when you are accepting that they will be triggered. Except when you're going into a situation aware it's going to happen and you are happy to make that part of the plan. Because at that stage, you are not simply playing into your opponent's hands, you are playing the game on an even footing. So if you know exactly where reactive moves are triggered and how, you can get to a point where they're only going off when you have accepted that they're going to. And that's very important because it means you're going to avoid any unwanted surprises. Part 2. This is a classic from chess and is a term called forking. And this is extremely important against reactive moves because as I've already identified, in isolated one-on-one incidents, reactive moves are incredibly powerful. But if you threaten multiple things at once, suddenly your opponent has to make difficult choices. And this is a chess term for forking. If you threaten 2 pieces, they can only protect one, then you're going to take the other. And this very much applies in 40k. If your opponent has a single powerful reactive move tool, like a Phantasm, for example, if you threaten 2 or 3 different Eldar units at once with your same unit, it doesn't matter if one of them runs away because you can still kill the other 2. And creating these sort of overload pressures, overload situations where you threaten a whole bunch of different things at once makes it extremely hard for your opponent to get value from single reactive moves, right? If you are going all in on a bunch of different things at one time, in forking them, as it were, then they have to make difficult choices. Are they going to spend a CP when it's not even going to keep much of their stuff safe? I hope so, because then you're forcing them to spend their CP, but you're also still taking down their resources. What you want to avoid is a sort of loss of one of your units for nothing. As long as you can avoid that, that's why it's good with a single unit to threaten 2 things in these kinds of games against like an Eldar, because if they run with one, you're still going to get the other. And that avoids you trading down quite as drastically, which is obviously is one of the things that your opponent wants. So establishing those multi-threat situations where you're threatening multiple different things, creating a fork so that the opponent has, even if they are using their reactive move, isn't actually protecting themselves as much as they would hope. That's a very big deal. And finally, we can get a little bit sneaky ourselves, right? There are plenty of tools for frustrating reactive moves. The biggest one that comes to mind is a CP cost increase aura. So Bjorn the Fell-Handed, Cypher, Kairos Fateweaver, anything that has an aura that makes a stratagem cost more is particularly valuable against reactive move stratagems. Your opponent isn't going to have infinite CP. If you can create a situation where a reactive move is costing them 2 CP or even 3 for certain armies, then that's going to deny them other opportunities in the same turn. They might want to heroically intervene. They might want to interrupt. If you make this expensive, then they might have to forego some of these choices. They won't be able to afford all of them. So deploying a Cypher into the middle at the right time in a go turn where a bunch of units are flying forward can make a huge difference to your opponent's ability to use reactive moves. Likewise, the new Nemesis Claw with their deny stratagems, that's a really powerful one as well. So I think making your opponent really bleed for the choices in terms of really bleed resources and CP is really valuable. You want this to be difficult. You don't want them to be able to do it over and over with impunity. So if you can make it expensive, it's definitely good. Another important one is to try and bait reactive moves out early in the turn. If you have less important small throwaway pieces, push those to where the reactive moves are first, right? Try and push things out and bait. It's just a bit like Overwatch. Like if you can bait it to a relatively inconsequential place early in the turn, that frees up your big hitters, your most dangerous units to then interact and get involved more easily. So again, you're forcing difficult choices, trying to push the opponent to use reactive moves where they don't want to. And then, of course, you have the option of simply not committing your big hitters at all if you decide you're happy enough with how it's gone and just attacking with something light. So that's the mini game, guys. I think there's a whole bunch of different interplays here. It takes a lot of practice, but ultimately you want to create a kind of pressure and poor choice sort of economy for your opponent that means even if they do have one or two really powerful reactive moves, it isn't enough to change your plans and to prevent them from losing assets and losing units. But it requires a different kind of more assertive, more pushy play, which is something I'm going to be talking about in a YouTube members video going out this very week. Thank you very much for watching. Massive appreciation to all of you. I will, of course, get back to some more specific units for Counterplay next week, so do let me know what you would like to see. Hit that like and subscribe, leave us a comment. We at 6++ really appreciate you. This is a big year for us, and we're really glad you're all along for the ride. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.